A former Constitutional Court Justice Johann Kriegler has entered the saga involving Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe. He's calling on the Judicial Service Commission to take action against him. It follows a complaint laid by Judge Patricia Goliath against Hlophe, alleging that he tried to manipulate an important case in former President Jacob Zuma's favor. Well, let's discuss this further. We're joined by the retired Constitutional Court Justice and Freedom Under Law Chairperson, Johann Kriegler. Justice Kriegler, thank you so much for your time. Firstly, you've, of course, have been speaking out about the way in which the JSC is going about handling the matter, in particular, how long it has taken to conclude the investigation around Mr. Hlophe. What would you want to see the JSC doing?
Kathy, I would love them to do their job. You say I've entered the arena recently. It's nearly 12 years since the Judicial Service Commission tried to sweep the Hlophe disaster in Braamfontein when he tried to persuade the Constitutional Court judges to change a judgment against Mr. Zuma, as he then was, that we first said to the JSC, please do your job, deal with this man and remove him from the bench. It's now, as I say, nearly 12 years later, the man has gone from disaster to disaster ever since. Time is up. Pelilindaba, the man must go.
Do you think he's enjoying a certain level of protection? And if so, what do you think is behind it? What's driving this lack of inaction?
Kathy, I had sincerely hoped you would not ask me that question. I do believe that there is a level of protection that the man has enjoyed for more than a decade. Precisely where it is, I do not feel free to disclose in public, but it is he has good friends in high circles.
But surely even having good friends in high circles should not get in the way of the proper administration of justice. So in that regard then, the JSC currently sits in the office of the Con-Court judge, and that's Chief Justice Mogoeng. Do you think there's a way that he needs to be handling this matter differently, perhaps even from his predecessors?
The Chief Justice does not handle the case on his own. In this instance, he's the chair of the Judicial Service Commission, which is a very large body that contains many people, including a large number of politicians. I do believe that the Chief Justice will push the matter as hard as he can. There are various steps to be taken. Whether these steps have been taken expeditiously is an open question. My own view and the view of Freedom Under Law is that there has been a disgraceful dilly-dallying in the process against Judge Hlophe, but I'm sure the Chief Justice will do what he can to put his foot on the accelerator.
So given the fact that then the history of this case tells us it has been tied up for quite a number of years, what are the options available, especially for those who are seeking relief, like Judge Goliath, who effectively has to report to Judge Hlophe and needs this matter resolved as soon as possible because she claims it's getting in the way of her being able to conduct her own duties?
Kathy, obviously the position is extremely difficult for all of Judge Hlophe's colleagues on the Cape bench and just about intolerable for his deputy. That is why we have pressed and will continue to press that if it is going to take even more time for the proceedings against Judge Hlophe to be concluded, let the man be suspended in the interim. He took special leave way back in 2008 when the charges were first leveled against him. He did that in conjunction with the then Minister of Justice. And he then went back on his own without referring to the minister. We suggest that that is exactly what should happen again today. The air in the judicial circles in the Western Cape will not be cleared unless and until Judge President John Hlophe is no longer there. Pending the final determination of the disciplinary proceedings against him, obviously the man should be absented from the office. Whether he does so voluntarily or whether others persuade him to do so is a different matter.
At the same time, of course, you do have his deputy who's had allegations leveled against her by a fellow judge who also happens to be the wife of the judge president. Given how far-reaching the saga is and some of the speculation that is swirling around it, what do you think would be in the best interests of justice in terms of handling this matter? I hear you on the suspension of Judge President Hlophe, but do you think the other two involved in this matter should also face the same fate while the JSC runs its investigations?
I think it would be presumptuous of me to try to prescribe to the Judicial Service Commission and its disciplinary tribunals, but I do believe, my own personal view is that those two lady judges can safely be left to do their job once the evil presence is removed.
What do you think is at stake in this particular matter?
Oh, Kathy, what is at stake is the credibility of the judiciary. Our country is going through stormy times. The judiciary is an essential stabilizing force, an essential unifying force. And if you and I and the public at large can't have confidence in the judiciary, we are very, very seriously adrift. It is absolutely, manifestly imperative that the judiciary should do everything within its power to purge itself of influences that reflect badly on its integrity, on its competence, on its impartiality, on its propriety for the job.
I wonder, Justice Kriegler, as you're speaking then just about the necessity of protecting what takes place within the judicial space. Of course, this week we also saw the shutdown of the Master of the High Court services. I wonder what you made of that, especially given the allegations were around corruption and maladministration. Has this happened before in the history of this country?
It's never ever happened before, and the ostensible rot in the Master's office is yet another reason why we need a strong, vigorous, manifestly honest and competent judiciary to deal with the matter in the final instance. There are various dull patches, various rotten patches in our state administration. The judiciary must be a sharp, clean knife to be able to excise those rotten parts. If it itself is blunt or not clean, we are in serious trouble.
But how does the judiciary begin to do that in a space where even you have acknowledged sometimes the weightings or the political influences of the day do end up having a bearing on what ultimately becomes as a result, as we're seeing in the John Hlophe matter, where he remains in that position despite this 12-year pending case?
Kathy, as so often, there's nothing wrong with the system. Our constitutional system and our statutory backup for the dealing with recalcitrant or defaulting judges is perfectly good. What is wrong is that the people on the Commission do not do their job sincerely, honestly without fear, favour or prejudice. You take the case of Judge Motata, who was left for years and years and years after he had publicly disgraced the bench with his conduct one night when he was driving under the influence, and thereafter put up a defence which was ultimately rejected by the court. The Judicial Service Commission's own disciplinary tribunal said this man should be dismissed. The Judicial Service Commission, the parent body, saw fit to ignore or override or overrule its own disciplinary body's recommendation, and it did not go to Parliament and say this man must be dismissed. On the contrary, they gave him a fine. Meanwhile, he had been earning a salary, sitting at home doing whatever he wanted to for some 8 or 9 years. They gave him a fine of about 1 year's salary, and he's gone on pension with a full judge's salary for the rest of his life. A man who did disgrace the judiciary on the findings of the tribunal appointed by the Judicial Service Commission, and which it preferred to ignore for reasons that it has not seen fit to give us.
So would you say that the JSC is letting the justice system down?
Deal with the rotten apples. Of course it is. It has done for years, and freedom under law has once gone to court. It will be going to court again in due course to get the Judicial Service Commission to do its job vis-à-vis Judge Hlophe, and probably also vis-à-vis Judge Motata.
All right, we're going to leave it there for tonight. Justice Kriegler there speaking on some of the matters involving senior members of the judiciary. As you heard, the legal battles in that particular case sound like they're far from over.